In the heart of the city, where businessmen hurried past coffee carts and workers rushed to catch their trains, there stood a small, brightly painted food truck named Surprise Bites, a modest little venture run by Emily, a hard-working young woman whose life had been a constant test of endurance, and though the golden rays of morning sunshine kissed the truck's orange surface with warmth, Emily barely noticed, her hands moving swiftly as she prepared cups of steaming coffee, flipped sizzling sandwiches, and handed out orders with practiced efficiency, her smile hiding the exhaustion that weighed heavily on her heart, because behind that smile was a story of loss, struggle, and sacrifice, for Emily had once dreamed of a life filled with books, art, and endless opportunities, but those dreams were buried the day her parents died in an accident, leaving her alone with the responsibility of raising her younger brother, and so she sold whatever she could, abandoned her own education, and poured every ounce of energy into this food truck, the only means she had to survive and keep her brother in school. And while she tried her best to stay strong, the reality of being a poor girl in a world that only respected money and status often left her feeling invisible, ignored, and unwanted, especially when wealthy men in suits came to her window, treating her like she was part of the background, another faceless worker in their world of luxury. But Emily never complained, she simply pushed forward, day after day, because survival was her only choice, until one Monday morning, when the plaza was unusually busy and the line outside her truck stretched longer than usual, she noticed a tall man standing quietly at the back of the line, his navy blue suit crisp, his posture confident, and though many in line looked impatient, this man seemed calm, his piercing eyes fixed on her as though studying her every move, and when finally his turn came, Emily didn't even glance at him properly, her voice tired but polite as she asked, "What can I get for you today?" while already preparing another cup of coffee. But instead of answering immediately, the man leaned closer, his voice low, steady, and almost intimate as he whispered words that made her freeze in shock, "Still remember me?" And in that instant, Emily's heart skipped a beat, her fingers trembling slightly as she looked up into his face for the first time, and her breath caught in her throat, because his eyes seemed strangely familiar, carrying with them a memory from a past she had long locked away, a memory of her high school days when she had once defended a shy, awkward boy who was constantly bullied, a boy who often sat alone at lunch, his head down, his clothes old and wrinkled, the kind of boy no one wanted to befriend, except Emily, who had once sat beside him, shared her sandwich, and told him softly, "You don't deserve the way they treat you, don't let them break you," and she remembered the way he had whispered a quiet "thank you" back then, his eyes filled with gratitude, but she had never seen him again after graduation, and life had carried her into hardship while she assumed he had vanished into the unknown. Yet here, standing in front of her, was a man who bore those same eyes, but this time they belonged to a powerful-looking CEO whose presence demanded attention, and Emily's mind spun with disbelief. But before she could form words, he took the cup she handed him, their fingers brushing briefly, and he gave her a smile that carried both mystery and recognition before walking away, leaving Emily's heart racing, because deep down she knew it was him, that same boy she had once defended, now transformed into a man of influence and wealth, and though she tried to shake off the thought, telling herself she was imagining things, the truth lingered in her chest like a spark of fire, and as the days passed, he returned again and again, always standing in her line, always ordering the same coffee, always giving her a look that seemed to speak volumes, until finally one afternoon, when the rush had died down and the sun painted the plaza in shades of orange, he stepped up to her window once more, but this time he didn't just whisper, he spoke clearly, calling her name, "Emily, you really don't remember me," and when she stared at him, wide-eyed, he chuckled softly, reminding her of a moment from the past, of the day she had stood between him and a group of bullies, her small frame shielding him as she shouted, "Leave him alone," and Emily gasped, covering her mouth, whispering his name from years ago, a name she hadn't said in so long, and the connection between them was undeniable, because the poor boy she had once helped was now the man who had become a millionaire CEO, yet instead of showing pride or arrogance, his eyes shone with something else. Gratitude, respect, and perhaps something deeper, and Emily's world tilted, because never in her wildest dreams had she imagined that a small act of kindness from her past would come back to her in this way, and as she struggled to process it, he smiled and said softly, "I've been looking for you, Emily, because I owe you everything," and with those words, her knees nearly gave out, because she realized that while she had been fighting to survive all these years, somewhere out there, her kindness had planted seeds that had grown into something extraordinary, and maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change in ways she never expected, because fate had brought back into her world the one person who remembered her not as the poor food truck girl, but as the girl who had once saved him from despair, and in that moment, as the city lights began to glow and her brother came running to her side, asking who the man was, Emily smiled faintly, her heart trembling with both fear and hope. Because she knew that this was not just a reunion, it was the beginning of a story that would test her strength, challenge her heart, and perhaps lead her to a life far beyond the food truck. And as the mysterious CEO walked away that night, leaving behind a promise that he would return, Emily whispered to herself that sometimes kindness had a way of coming back, stronger and brighter than ever. And for everyone watching this story unfold, remember, life can change in the blink of an eye, and sometimes the smallest kindness becomes the greatest miracle. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because more powerful stories like this are waiting to touch your heart and remind you that hope, love, and destiny are always closer than you think.